Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm sure you all know I'm Maria Mazziotti Gillen, but for the purposes of the, thank you, dear. For the purposes of the video, I have to say my name. Before we actually start the Allen Ginsberg Poetry Awards reading, which is one of my favorite readings of the year, I have to say, because I love the wonderful variety of the poetry and how strong it is, and I just am so pleased to see you all here. I do want to thank some people. One is Sheldrake Lucas, who provided all the food for free and made it and provided it, and is a wonderful donation he makes several times a year to the Poetry Center. So that's a lovely thing for us. And I also want to thank Susan Balick, who is the director of the Cultural Affairs Department and who also has been very helpful in with the Poetry Center and taking care of all the millions of things that have to be taken care of, including sometimes I forget a name, so I have to call Sue. What's that name that I'm forgetting, that I'm blocking right now? And she tells me. But she's wonderful. And let's give her a round of applause for the careful and difficult work that she does in keeping this whole thing running and smoothly, and in making sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. Everything that happens has to be proofread, all the grant applications. I mean, it's amazing what she does, and how she kind of taught it to herself is another amazing thing. And then I want to say that Smita Desai, who was our secretary for 21 years, is retired at the end of the year, and so I miss her terribly, but we do have Cynthia Pagan, who is taking her place, the young woman who's sitting out there. Make sure to thank her for the work she's done in trying to fill Smita's very big shoes with very little direction, actually. And so it's really so hard for me to let go of Smita, but Cynthia is wonderful, and I'm glad to have found her. I think she'll be an excellent addition to our staff, so I'm very happy about that. I also want to say that we couldn't do what we do without the funding that we receive from New Jersey State Council on the Arts, which has been funding us for 45 years. And also part of our funding comes from the National Endowment for the Arts. The rest comes from individual donations and legacies that people have left money in their will for the Poetry Center, and individual members and donors give money for the Poetry Center as well. And most important, I think, to thank Dr. Stephen Rose, who is the president of the college and who provides a lot of financial assistance to us by paying for security and janitorial services, and by letting us use this beautiful old building, and all the things that he does for us, which really we could not manage without. So, he pays Smita's salary, and now Cynthia's salary, the school pays. And so we're very fortunate to have such a supportive president who always goes around the country bragging about how wonderful we are, how wonderful the Poetry Center is, And I love that. I love that he goes to Dallas, Texas, and they ask about the Poetry Center, and he beams because they're asking him about that. And I know a few years ago I went to read in Toronto, and I was invited to the home of the head of the Department of English department at the University of Toronto. And the first thing the man said to me was, "Oh, you're the poets from the Poetry Center with the building on the logo." So that was kind of lovely. There we are in Canada, and this guy, he doesn't recognize me particularly, but he recognizes the Poetry Center, which makes me very happy. I put a lot of lifeblood into the Poetry Center, and I love seeing it recognized in other places and in Canada and Italy. When they talk about it, it makes me feel tremendously satisfied. Anyway, we're going to start the reading now. We're going to ask you to read the poem that won, and don't feel you have to introduce the poem, just read the poem. And because otherwise we'll be here until Marie is 98, and I may be fast approaching it, but I'm not quite there yet. So we don't want to be here all that long. So let's start with the first prize winners, Mark Hillringhouse of Verona, New Jersey, giving away all my books. Mark.
Giving away all my books. All through college and grad school, and jobs in libraries and bookstores, and working for book reviews and magazines, and 35 years of teaching, and packing and unpacking all my books, and finally, at this stage, letting them go, hundreds of them, first giving them away to students, then donating them, and finally, just leaving them in places to surprise people. I started hiding them in supermarkets. I hid a copy of Gulliver's Travels in the cereal aisle between Count Chocula and Captain Crunch, hoping a kid would reach for the cereal and grab Swift off the shelf and say, "Mom, look." In Home Goods, I hid Allen Ginsberg's The Fall of America between the pillows and the comforters, thinking someone mindlessly strolling the aisles would reach in to grab a pillow and happen upon Ginsberg's poems and start reading. Imagine if that made that person think, or even go into a rant, the way Ginsberg would, and the way I would like to rant about this country, standing in the middle of Home Goods. In a state park men's room, I left my copy of Muldoon's selected poems on top of a vending machine. He had signed my copy, but his handwriting was so illegible, and no one could make out his name on the title page. I would love to watch to see who might go up to the vending machine, drop in some quarters, and shaking the machine because the snack got stuck, Muldoon falls on his head. And if I could, I would film all this, make a documentary of people finding books in odd places. I left a copy of Joyce's Finnegan's Wake in a bank. I left it on the counter by the withdrawal and deposit slips, hoping someone writing out a check might take it to the teller. The teller would look and say, "I can't even read this book." And then at some point, after more books turn up, a reporter makes inquiries, interviews the people who found them, asking what it was like to find a copy of The Fall of America at Home Goods. I left my old copy of Wallace Stevens' selected poems at my Subaru dealer's service waiting area. I love to imagine Stevens, who never drove a car, at the service window, listening to the service manager drawl on in mechanic gobbledygook. "Your fuel injectors need a service clean with high-pressure fuel rail cleaner." And Stevens replies, "Chief tan, if a can of Ascan and caftan of tan with henna hackles halt." In Home Depot, I wedged my large print edition of Moby Dick, over 1,000 pages, that I started back in college and never finished, between the galvanized pipe fittings in the plumbing aisle. Call me Ishmael, I thought to myself, hoping a do-it-yourselfer would yell, "There she blows." On the last warm day in October, I left Tom Lux's The Cradle Place on a park bench in a secluded spot under an oak that had turned bright red, a place I go to sit when I want to be alone. I turned to the poem, Late Ambassadorial Light, and read, "Light reaches through a leaf, and that light diminished passes through another leaf, and another down to the lawn beneath." I felt it would be the right place to leave the book in the autumn sunlight, with the leaves falling, knowing someone would sit there, find the book turned open to that poem, and give it a new home. Thank you.
And our other first prize winner is Colleen Michaels from Beverly, Massachusetts, and her poem is called Round Table. Let's welcome Colleen.
Thank you, Maria. Round Table. There was a pleasure in cleaning the greasy crease of the table, whose leaves were hardly used. I'd run the edge of my mother's matchbook or a clean butter knife through the gully filled with our family meals, collecting the crumbs and stories we often dropped. Exaggeration is the recipe that got passed down, our best dish. We could laugh like any family cutting onions. But what has lodged the deepest, the one that all the other stories rotate around, the lazy Susan placed right in the middle of the tabletop, is a truth that feeds me. My father was a counterfeiter. The year I was studying medieval lit, sitting at long library tables, my hands clean and gloved near gold borders of manuscripts, my dad was printing money in our basement in Boston. He served time. He returned to the table with a clean plate. Only later would I recall the bottles of green ink, his beginnings and breakdowns of color separation, his small rags of currency and inked plates right there next to our beat-up washing machine, near pages he'd ripped from stolen books and clipped to the clothesline. We were both trying to flay and smote words, to find something of value in the grain of plain cotton paper. I was a scholarship kid, and money was his promotion. Printer by trade, he believed he was making art. I wanted to boast a degree in jousting around our kitchen table. Visiting on break, I'd hang my wet laundry inside out on that clothesline, trying to reverse the integrity of my fibers, so I'd look new, like money. I went back to my books, my quests and crosses of gold filigree, only to learn to crave the grit of a round table, to cleave a true story into spun gold. Thank you.
Next, we have second prize winner, Jason Craig Poole from South Orange, New Jersey. Sentence.
Thanks, Maria. Sentence. We were all pretty sure we were going to die because everyone around us was dying. Well, that isn't exactly true. It was mostly gay men and IV drug users and the people with whom they'd had sexual contact. Well, What I mean is that the gay men were dying en masse, and there didn't seem to be anything that anyone could do, and no one could give us the real reasons. And it didn't seem like there was any way out, and the world didn't care. And somehow it was okay that gay men were dying, and it felt like that's what people wanted, which hurts to even type those words now, even though it isn't all that unusual in history. And we were watching everyone die, sick and covered with lesions that looked like black leeches, bodies wasted away to wax-skinned skeletons. And that's the kind of thing we saw on the news. First, gay cancer, and then AIDS. And it felt like a death sentence imposed on all of us, because I was part of that community too, finally admitting it to myself in college for the first time, even though I'm pretty sure everybody already knew. Because maybe the only person I was keeping it a secret from was myself. But my heart knew, and my body knew, the way I longed for and lusted for other guys and couldn't admit it, how I wanted to be with a guy I was already in love with but couldn't say it, not to anyone, even myself, because that would make it true. But if I was going to die, I wanted to die with an honest heart, and I wanted to say, I'm gay, and say it out loud and claim it. And the scariest part was that no one knew for sure how to stay safe, because the information kept changing. Maybe sweat, maybe even holding hands was high risk, because what if you had a paper cut and kissing was out? And there was this crushing wave of fear. Are you? Am I? And we all cycled through denial and paranoia, getting tested all the time, even though I was more chaste than anybody I knew. And somehow it was important, even though all our mentors and all our idols were dying. Tony and Robert and Don and Keith and Michael and Paul, and it felt important to add my voice to this chorus and say, I'm gay. And maybe I expected something to happen that day, that Saturday afternoon in October, like some kind of sci-fi horror novel where one gets infected simply by uttering that sentence. 2 words, 5 letters, and an apostrophe. But believing it was worth it. And I remember shaking and crying, scared and relieved, saying the thing that I feared the most, maybe even more than death itself. And I remember holding his hand. How safe and right it felt when he squeezed it tight. Thank you.
And now our honorable mentions, Howard Berelson from Teaneck, New Jersey, and his poem is called Warning Label.
To avoid suffocation, keep plastic bags away from children. Perhaps a better understanding might be, keep children away from everything to avoid suffocation. Perhaps this then, children, keep away, avoid adults. Now that's a thought, avoid adults. What about this? Children, adults can and will suffocate you. Or this, adults, just keep away. Don't stray, don't go too far. You are such a good child. You are a rotten child. You should only have a child like you. I don't like your hair. I don't like who you hang with. Never say that again to me. Who taught you that? Wait, why do you hurt me? Wait until I tell your father. Wait until I tell your mother. Your dress is too revealing. Your dress is too tight. Your navel rings have to go. You haven't been to church. You haven't been to temple. You haven't been to wherever the hell you go. Where did you get that tattoo? What will become of you? You are a bum. You are a slut. Why are you so fucked up? You are not my child. Where have I failed you? I don't know you anymore. You are your father's child, not mine. You are your mother's child, not mine. You are making me sick. You're breaking my heart. Why are you using that language? I don't want to hear that again from your mouth. We are not arguing, we are just talking. We are getting a divorce. Why are you so upset? Where are you going? Are you coming back? Why don't you call me anymore?
Eric Childs, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Eric Childs, oh, here he comes. My father's eulogy.
My father's eulogy. As the oldest, the chore fell to me. So many stories in his 90 years, how to condense them to a choice few, because the bishop would only allow 10 minutes. And Mom had final say over the script. I wore one of his ties, a purple silk foulard, for the memorial performance. And the church was crowded. All those people, my siblings too, had different memories. So which would bring them back to life, balancing laughter and sorrow? No matter how much I practiced, I knew I'd stumble as my shaking fingers unfolded the pages on the lectern. Torn as I was by disdain and grief, conflicted by both love and hurt, remembering angry words just weeks before about stupid politics. But the deacon's smile seemed to be an absolution. He was there, but he wasn't. There was no casket, just a photo between two vases of flowers. He had donated his body to a medical school. And yet I saw him in my siblings' spare shoulders, aquiline noses, high cheekbones, and blue eyes. Heard him when I told how he loved to argue, always got the last word. But not this time, Dad, I said. The church laughed nervously. And Mom nodded just a little, for there were no more arguments. Only anecdotes to make him breathe once more. How he always expected us to be better at chores, in sports, in school, with each other. How competitive he was at tennis. Excuse me. How he would give anything to a stranger. A couple of comic tales, comfortable chuckles now, the bishop once saying nice, calmness soothing my words with forgiveness, wishing he heard this. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful, honey. Donna L. Emerson, Petaluma, California. Her poem is Who Am I? So good to see Donna from California. Such a beautiful place. Have you ever been there? The light is incredible.
I met Maria in Petaluma. And we want you to come out and read again, so
Good.
I'll be talking to you.
Yeah.
My poem comes straight from my community college class. It's called Who Am I? The epigram is Henry Louis Gates Jr. says, "We can't help where we're born or who we're born to." When we study self-esteem in my community college class, I ask students to bring an object to class that represents them. Many bring photographs or baby pictures of themselves, a baseball, ballet shoes. David, tall, who rarely speaks, goes to the front of the classroom, takes off his Land's End shirt, turning around to boast his full-color tattoo of an eagle, wings spread wide, filling his entire back. The class gasps in unison. I was worried about what else he would take off. I don't know who I am, but this eagle makes me feel alive. I can soar over everything. Aisha, whose father is an imam, reports she had to run to class today because the white students pulled off her hijab, chasing her from the library, taunting, "Raghead, go home." "Where is my home?" she asks, tears falling fast. When Andy Lopez, holding a plastic toy gun, was killed by police, African-American Jamala raises her hand, then almost whispers, "I bought one of those plastic guns for my son last Christmas. I nearly brought that today." A white student, Martha, asks, "Why would you allow your child to be outside with one of those?" Jamala said, "All my son's friends in the neighborhood have them. They play guns." Half the class nods. My fellow college teachers say to avoid politics, religion, home life. How do you teach self-esteem if students can't talk? If you can't crawl through the clouds or underbrush of where they live and who they were born to?
Beautiful, dear. Angela M. Franklin from Los Angeles, California. I have a feeling this list is not right, but anyway, is Angela here? Oh, hooray! Okay, Angela M. Franklin, Los Angeles, California, unbroken habit.
Unbroken habit. Excuse me. Some people brag about beauty in their near-death experiences. I saw no white lights or well-lit tunnels, nor angels waiting with harp and halos. I had a near-death experience with witnesses, one being my 4-year-old son. My life never flashed before me when the knife bent against my temple. My husband straddled me in front of company, snarled, "If I can't have you, no one else will." His rusted knife lunged, split my lip and chest. My breast rolled under a dull blade. I played dead. My suede coat punctured, protected the heart he aimed for. My left breast resembled a botched surgery. Kicking your ass has become a habit. A woman can't tell her abuser she's breaking his habit. If a man hits you once, he'll hit you again, Mama always said. She didn't live her words. Mothers dismiss their own advice. Mine led by example. So I neglected to tell her I'd already accepted my man's left hand on my right eye. I needed to protect his guilt, my shame. Like busted windows, draw more rocks to abandoned houses. Each bruise drew new contusions. My face, my worth, like a cigarette butt under a steel-toed boot. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful poem, Angela. Very brave. Next person is Linda Macaulay Freeman from Marlborough, New York, called Simmering. Sorry.
I thought I was coming from far. This is fantastic.
I think she beat us.
Yes, and the poems are just amazing. Simmering. I come from a dozen ants tisking my size,
pinching my cheeks between sharp fingers. From a neighborhood of parked cars as first and third base, manhole for home. My skull cracked by a bat as I stood there, lost in my somersault mind. I come from brick houses with postage stamp lawns, bound by chain-linked fences. From dandelions dancing along sidewalk seams, streetlights shimmering dust, hydrant spray in summer. I come from hide and seek and dread of not being looked for, of never being found. I come from simmering sauce, garlic, tomatoes, basil, scenting the kitchen in everyone else's home. Aproned mothers calling for supper, tinged by their country's tongues. I come from the chaos of too many children, a voice no one ever heard or listened to, from always being good and never good enough.
Wonderful, honey. That's wonderful. Our next honorable mention is James Gwynn from Clifton, New Jersey, and his poem is called In Her House. Good to see you, Jim.
Hi, my name is Jim Gwynn. My poem is called In Her House. Years after, everything's so still, and you wind the clock so you can hear it strike some hour that will continue to haunt you. And as all that sound slows down to an echo, light bulbs flicker, dimming and surging, as the Philco compressor clicks and pulses on. A push of outside wind allowing the floors to talk to the ceiling. A creaking so strong you would think someone walking upstairs. You think of her still sitting at the table, stirring sugar into coffee, offering a cup with pie. You'd sit down and listen to the run of stories about the locals with luck, both good and bad. Stories about distant family. Forgetting you were there to put things in some kind of order so that new people wouldn't be burdened to remember her too. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Henny Lickus, Cambridge, Massachusetts. I see him right in front of me. Long way around and not home yet.
Hi there. May I begin with a trigger warning? My poem deals with white supremacy and racial violence. It's also in 4 parts. Long way around and not home yet. The longest way around is the sweetest way home, Walter liked to say, on our lazy afternoon drives, roaming back roads of Lee County, an Alabama county named for General Robert E. Lee. I lived there oblivious to that place name. I grew up with schools named Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, without questioning that naming. Then there was my fraternity house at Auburn, with its white columns, Confederate flag draped between them, cannon on the lawn. A slow learner among too many slow learners. Like the Birmingham of my childhood, where whites blamed blacks for bombing the 16th Street Baptist Church. Decades passed before arrest and conviction of 4 Klansmen who planted dynamite on a Sunday morning and murdered 4 young girls. Those back roads wound around fields of soybeans and cotton. Once we got out to look at bowls up close, I picked a blossom the size of a baby's fist, felt the wire of its fibers, pinched out its seeds. 2. I never saw myself as a Southerner or kin to Confederates. All 4 of my grandparents were born in Greece and came to Alabama around 1910. A fraternity brother who claimed a Confederate officer as his ancestor liked to say my grandparents arrived amid a wave of undesirables from Eastern Europe. My fraternity deified Lee. Our house, with its columns, huge Confederate flag, and cannon, aspired to be a mansion loyal to the cause. Every spring on a Friday afternoon, the Brotherhood dressed up like Confederate soldiers and plantation dandies and dressed our dates in hoop skirts and frilly sunbonnets. With the huge flag as backdrop, we'd preen on the lawn, guzzling alcohol, our dates twirling parasols, until a couple of brothers managed a cannon blast. We would then parade to the center of town, secede from the Union, and revel into the night in a stupor of Old South nostalgia. 3. Mrs. B, my 8th grade teacher, preached states' rights. She saluted Bull Connor and his attack dogs and fire hoses. If President Kennedy and Washington declared segregation must end, Mrs. B said, secede. I graduated from high school without ever having heard a teacher question slavery or the Confederacy or Jim Crow or KKK. I was 59 when I realized I had gone through grade school, high school, college, and graduate work with only white classmates and white teachers. I was 63 when I learned that in 1669, the legislature of Virginia passed a law ensuring that violence against enslaved people, beatings, branding, mutilations, was the enslaver's right. And if violence resulted in death, the slave master and any underlings could not be charged with a crime, I was 65 when I learned that the U.S. did not go from producing less than 1% of the world's cotton in 1791 to producing 66% in 1860 because of the invention of the cotton gin. What fueled that astronomical growth and drove the first productivity of enslaved men, women, and children was the whipping machine, the beatings inflicted on anyone who did not meet their daily quota for pounds of cotton picked. 4. The morning I recounted Walter's line about the longest way home, the longest way around, thousands of protesters across the country were denouncing the murder of George Floyd under the knee of a Minneapolis policeman, and the murder of Breonna Taylor after midnight in her home in Louisville, Kentucky, by policemen who falsified a warrant so they could smash their way in with a battering ram, and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, jogging on a sunny Sunday in Brunswick, Georgia, by KKK wannabes with a shotgun. Long histories, deadly still, and me, too long speechless, too long blind. Thank you.
Next honorable mention is Maria Lucella, Long Island City, New York, When It's Just About Hope.
Thank you. I did want to say one thing. This was a very bittersweet reading for me because last year I was here with my sister Julia, whose book, Our Lively Kingdom, was one of the finalists, and we were here with her handsome, healthy husband, who was born in Paterson, who now lies in a hospital with stage 4 lung cancer and nothing's working. So I ask people to say a prayer. And this crazy poem is called When It's Just About Hope. So, thank you. A monsoon whipped across brick building steel girder, New York City that morning. I rose as I do now with effort, peeling my body from the half-slept-in bed, where it took me months to sleep in the middle, to gradually roll to his side, run my fingers over the sheet, the pillow, and slip into a banal routine that is safe and warm and unthinking. I wring solace from superficial strangers at the grocery store, the coffee shop, the cafe, places people recognize me but do not know the heaviness I carry. I seek comfort from healers, doctors, people who talk softly and touch you. I wince at my long ago indifference to widows who said most of all they missed touch. So I'd hug them, an empty gesture perhaps, so little satisfaction, yet a kinship among those left behind. My mother-in-law said the same. I'd comply, and yes, now I grasp it. Perhaps it was the stun of her matter-of-fact tone when my tiny, energetic acupuncturist expressed no sympathy or solace when I reported my stepson's last suicide attempt. She said, "Why did you save him? In my country, we would have let him go because he wants to die. What kind of life will he have?" My body and heart petrified as if in a snow globe without snow or light. I call my stepson to hear his voice, remind myself why it was necessary to save him, mid-flight to death, that I did not harm him. His logic takes me by surprise. Yes, together we would miss his father. But we're gonna be okay. You've known me 40 years, almost my whole life, and what I remember best is that you fell in love with me the minute you met me. Thank you.
Next is Nancy Lubarsky from Cranford, New Jersey, and her poem is Refugee.
My poem is called Refugee. Here, in a small apartment, among flashcards and simple picture books that cover the floor, you nurse your toddler, then serve me fragrant tea. We sit cross-legged, shoes at the door, try to make sense of English. Workbook pages tell stories of other immigrants who attempt to find jobs, go to the doctor, or shop for meals. Your daughter interrupts, takes ownership of the books, the index cards, the pens and paper. She scribbles her own story. I wonder what you have survived, escaped from, who you've left behind. You can't yet express your trauma or your family's. Bits of language hint at where you came from. We study an Afghani map. Little by little, we sort through your former life, gather pieces of your present one. When our conversation gets too complicated, we turn to WhatsApp and Google Translate to communicate. We pause. You clear the floor, cover it with the printed cloth you use for every meal. Serve a steaming platter of rice and meat. Insist I eat. Afterwards, we revisit the flashcards. You repeat after me. Happy, tired, sad, thirsty. Gradually, your own words emerge. I am sad for my brother. He was beaten by the Taliban. Your daughter reaches for you. I touch your hand.
Maren Moore, West Orange, New Jersey, Moss.
Moss. I cling to long associations and friendships like moss on a tree. You have to scrape me off.
I love it.
My optometrist has retired, and so ends our chatty catch-ups and warm exchanges about family, births, weddings, losses. We shared our progress for 30 years. I followed her to an inconvenient location when she merged her practice, just as I traipsed after my dentist for 40 years through 4 locations. My internist and my endocrinologist gave up their practices after I followed them to different sites in journeys that lasted decades. My friends find me predictably reliable. Give me enough warmth, and I will be there, as loyal as moss.
Wonderful, Marion. Next is Lisa Nicolau from Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and her poem is called Upside Down. And Lisa has some fans here.
Upside down. I wish I had learned to do a cartwheel, put my hands on the ground and my legs straight in the air. Wondered what the view would be upside down. I coached my best friend Karen, broke down the task into steps so that she could complete continuous cartwheels on the grassy path between my house and her garden apartment. Because of me, she made the cheerleading team, and I acted like her mother, cheering for her, since her real mother was usually passed out drunk in her recliner. I taught Karen to do a cartwheel, the way I later tutored a young woman in calculus, even though I had never studied math myself. I couldn't do a cartwheel or complicated calculus, but I somehow managed to instill confidence in others, believed so much in them that they began to believe in themselves. I sprinkled fairy dust into a lot of lives, convinced my daughter that she could handle the job, convinced my students to write the poems and stories that earned them countless prizes. I found myself at the crossroads at 50 years of age, reeling from the sudden death of a friend and the loss of my place in my beloved school. I found a few leftover sprinkles of glitter and used them on myself, started to write, and finally saw the world turn upside down. Thank you.
Wonderful, Lisa, thank you. Marion Paganello, Fair Lawn, New Jersey, lately in 2019.
Thank you, Maria. So this poem is called Lately in 2019. Sadly, it could be called Lately in 2025. Anyway, we are in a strange, uncertain, and sobering time. While the world smolders and convulses, I take long meditative walks through the parks and paths around my home, trying to wrest my thoughts from the virus of moral squalor and the detritus of failed leadership, bigotry, and corruption. On these solitary walks, I embrace, like a salve to my beleaguered heart, so much beauty. I spot a butterfly and think instantly of my siblings and our father, for whom lepidoptery was a beloved hobby. He would release all 5 of us kids into the fields, equipped with butterfly nets and the determination to catch the very best specimens for his collection. We scampered through those sunlit fields, awash with wildflowers, the creamy white of Queen Anne's lace, the gorgeous blue of chicory, the bright yellow of buttercups, the tickling singing grasses, and the promise of butterflies. Back then, there were so many, and each of us knew their names before we could read or spell. Tiger swallowtails, orange sulfurs, morning cloaks, red spotted purples, buckeyes, painted ladies, northern blues, gorgeous, jewel-winged, ephemeral. To this day, I know that when my 2 remaining siblings have the rare delight of seeing a butterfly, they also think of us and our father, all those years ago, ourselves sunlit and running through those summer fields in a tender reflex of connection. Lately, in 2019, I think about mortality and metamorphosis and how losing someone precious, essential to the shape of my life, will happen. It's just a matter of time. And I will have to somehow bear that moment when I open my reluctant hands to release them, beloved, irreplaceable, ephemeral, and let my heart be graced by the lifting shadows of their spangled wings.
Is Tammy Palino here? Oh, good. Collinswood, New Jersey. Aperture.
Aperture. When Jackie died, I bought the Times and tucked it away in my first post-divorce apartment. I care little for royalty, real or conjured, but Jackie shot photos as a journalist before we anointed her our version of a queen. Anyway, that's what I told myself, still do, as the 30-year-old newsprint stays sealed in its plastic bag. I've tried Googling her photos. They must exist in some dusty DC morgue. But the almighty algorithm leads me instead to the black turtleneck, oversized sunglasses, A-line dresses, and demure smiles, squandered on diplomats, heads of state, and a husband already grown bored by them. Scroll long enough, the pink suit, the pillbox hat, bloody embellishments for all the world to see. Scroll longer still, wedding gown, hand-stitched by a nameless black seamstress from Delaware. Our king there, relaxed and grinning past her, and Jackie, gripping his elbow, eyes focused hard on nothing, as if she already knows. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, next is Jennifer Poteet, Montclair, New Jersey. Her poem is Little Miracle.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, dear.
Little miracles. I wakened dark this November morning under a thick comforter, low snore of the cat still asleep against my back. Last night I chose today's clothes, so I hit snooze before getting up. My bare feet are warm on the carpet as I make the bed. I paddle down to the kitchen, feed Kitty the mackerel pate he likes, drink strong coffee from my mug with the J on it. My bus comes right away and a man rises to offer me his seat. I arrive at a job I enjoy. Our office is cold, but I've brought a sweater. The boss laughs at a joke I tell. My coworker, Carmen, treats me to pizza after we finish what's due. At 5 after 5, I walk the long block to the train, my reverse commute. The sky is full of stars. A scrap of light remains. Thank you.
Maud Caroline Pitch, Tottleboro, New Jersey. I wanted to look like Debbie Reynolds. It was that era.
My poem is Sunflower Poem number 16. I'm looking at a giant gold-frilled sunflower in a vase on my dining room table, and I'm smiling. Let me tell you how it got there. A few days ago, I drove past a fanciful sunflower garden boasting tall stalks and glorious blooms, leaning majestically against the front of a house on Boyle Avenue in Totowa. So this morning, I stapled together a booklet of 15 sunflower poems I've written over the years, then drove to the house and rang the doorbell. When a man came to the door, I quickly told him, I'm not selling anything. I just love your sunflowers and brought you a present of sunflower poems. The man was definitely startled and thoroughly delighted. He accepted the gift, then asked if I would like to have one of his sunflowers. His offer surprised me. I said yes. As he went inside to get clippers, his wife came out. She told me they plant sunflowers every summer to help save the bees that busily buzz around the blooms. I told her I've often considered planting a milkweed patch to save the monarch butterflies, but have never actually done it. Maybe next summer. When her husband returned, we introduced ourselves. They are John and Roseanne Butler. John asked me to select which sunflower I wanted, then carefully cut the thick, woody stalk. I brought the beauty home, placed it in a sturdy vase, and am enjoying its dazzling presence in the center of my table. And now that I've told my story, I will put the pen down on this, the 16th poem in my ever-growing sunflower poetry collection.
Okay, Natasha Raven, Nyack, New York, The Ritual. Natasha?
The Ritual. Staying over at Grandma and Grandpa's house was a ritual. I would lay quietly in their on their dark green feather-stuffed sofa, memorizing all the things that made this place feel different than anywhere else. The tall, dark, red velvet chair that scooped me up and surrounded my small body with coziness. The carved jade lamp that glowed like a scoop of pistachio ice cream where the light shone through. The cabinets filled with Grandma's used gift paper, our Christmas presents patiently unwrapped to help replenish her legendary collection. I spent most of the time gazing up at the large painting with lightning-filled sky and almost audible thunder. The stone path led up to a lonely house, haunted, I was sure. Each time I studied this piece of disquieting art, I would find eyes that peered back, frightening faces that formed in the dark that weren't there earlier. But always, when I became scared that something evil would climb out of the painting and harm me in my sleep, very soon a hug and kiss and a tucking in would remind me how loved and safe I was.
Is Christine Waldyer here? Oh, good, honey. I didn't see you, so I thought, well, maybe this is something, somebody didn't show up. Christine Redmond Waldyer, Manasquan, New Jersey, naming.
Naming. The first time I realized I was different, I was just 21, just beginning to find the bar scene. My friends and I found a 2-story bar over Neptune's Route 35 bridge, overlooking the water. The Tides was our Friday night place, the place where you could go alone and find friends, make dance floors where there was none. New friends were made as well, and Tammy was always breaking in like-minded girls from the pediatrician's office she worked for. It was then when introductions over music, over the voices rising towards vaulted ceilings, when I found myself. And this is my oldest friend, Tammy says, from kindergarten. The 3 new girls are slim, petite, blonde, in washed-out jeans, cut-off tops. Beers already in hand, each reaches out to grab mine with their dry one. Betsy says, "Oh, I love your dress. I didn't know Tammy had artsy friends." I was in a midnight blue dress that ended just below the knee, with buttons that ran the length of the material, a dip at the breast, a slit to the side, Victorian-like black boots that laced to ankle. Thank you.
Robert Rosenblum, Monroe Township, New Jersey, tattoo.
Tattoo. A number of people in our building had camp stamps on the fleshy parts of their forearms. In the apartment buildings all around us, Poles, Hungarians, a woman from Romania, like my mother. The neighborhood was crawling with them. You might have thought the Germans had bad aim, ordered their Zyklon B from Acme products. The odds of surviving Auschwitz were better than the odds of winning Powerball. I wish I could play those numbers now in all their permutations and combinations. My parents' neighbors were the lucky ones. The Czech woman upstairs hung from her 6th-floor windows to clean them, her back to the street. No safety belt, no one inside holding her legs. She kept cheating death, even though the war was over. The Germans didn't have time to ink up her village. They were losing and in a hurry.
Ann Sander, Warwick, New York, mirror writing.
Thank you. Mirror writing. My mother is of that generation when penmanship mattered, a disciple of the Palmer method, for which she won an award recognizing her perfectly pitched slant, the matching humps of her M's and delicate curlicues crowning her P's, the neatly aligned margins and hyphens in all the right places. Did she practice the names of boys her immigrant parents would never let her date, careers she could not pursue? She often wrote with a steady hand business letters for her father, and for her illiterate mother it was lists, rice, milk, bread, to hold next to labels while trolling the A&P aisles. She became the mother who persecuted her firstborn over homework, repositioning my hands on the paper and pen until I caved, wrote in a cursive worthy of Catholic nuns, the only ones who prized penmanship as much as she. Bless her, bless them all, but I wanted more than anything my mother's knack for mirror writing, a pen in each hand, poised in the center of the page, shimmying further apart in syncopated coordination, like Rogers and Astaire drifting across a ballroom floor. That was the perfect illustration of her adaptation after a broken arm. The first of many adjustments in which she learned to become the girl her parents prized, the one with a parlor trick and beautiful handwriting, her name pitched perfectly in either direction. Thank you.
Wonderful. Margaret Sirocco of Montclair, New Jersey. Benvenuto a Roma. I'd like to be benvenuting at Roma right now.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everybody. Benvenuto a Roma. The first morning in Rome, I wake to white curtains billowing with the breeze. An enclave of apartments encloses the courtyard in a kind of medieval protective stance, etched with clotheslines zigzagging their way on a grand scale across an expansive space, reminiscent of the clotheslines I grew up with. I booked the pension back in the States when we used to call hoteliers long distance on landlines to let a room. In fractured Italian, I sprinkled mi piace and mille grazie as pink cherry blossoms fell to the ground on a spring day outside my Hoboken window. I don't understand most of what they are saying. Walking the short distance from Termini Station, my husband and I aren't sure what we will find beyond a bed and a mattress upon our arrival. Our gracious host greets two tired Americani travelers in Italian like we are family, kissing cheeks. The next morning, I suffer from jet lag, walk down the hallway to take a shower. There is one shared bathroom per floor. We never asked about showers or air conditioning. Only the American hotels have it. The rest of the Italians and wayward travelers acclimate to the heat. Cold water trickles in a tiny stream as I check the faucet twice. After dressing in a miniskirt and tank top, I make my way to the front desk, sweating but smiling at the owner, not sure if I'm speaking Spanish or Italian. I ask, agua or is it aqua? Thank goodness she can't see the spelling in my head. She picks up a glass. Gas, no gas, she asks. She's speaking about drinking, not bathing. Oh, brother, I think gas is sparkling and no gas is plain, which differs from my English-Italian dictionary, which says frizzante. The dictionary is upstairs in my room. I sign with my hands that may resemble rain rather than shower, but not a glass of water, then pantomime washing my body. Ah, she says, which means the same in Italian and English. Non alla mattina, al pomeriggio o notte. I get the drift. Plan on showering afternoon or at night. Then she says a lot of something else as I board a slow-moving translation train. She stops, I smile, she shakes her head and says, un momento, and leaves me standing there. She disappears down the hallway and reappears with 2 espressi. We click our tiny cups as she toasts me. Benvenuto a Roma. My mouth fills with smooth espresso and my heart with warmth. Mille grazie, signora. I say again, I am getting very good at being polite. Mom would be proud. I still smell from my travels, but the espresso resets me. I thank her again and return to our tiny room. I collapse next to my love, who has not stirred. The curtains continue to billow and lift with the delicate breeze as I drift off to sounds of I Love Lucy coming from a TV across the courtyard. I can't stop smiling. Thank you.
Marianne Siebert, I swear I saw you, Marianne. Paris, West Orange, New Jersey, the Beale Farm on Saturday River Road. Oi. What's wrong with me today?
the Beale Farm on Saddle River Road. The farm disappeared one day like the fluff of a dandelion. The house with its widow walk folded like a stuffed valise and rolled itself away. Only the smells of ripe fruit and turned earth remained. In dreams, the haystack bakes in the sun, and the painted chicken coop sings. The graveled road still winds through the orchard. I stood at the farmhouse door that last summer with a birthday present tucked under my arm and looked into the red checkered kitchen with its shiny linoleum and oversized apple pie on the counter. This must be the home of Dick and Jane's grandma, I remember thinking.
Oh, must be. Ken Silvestri, Nyack, New York, every Sunday.
Every Sunday, through the 1950s, late Sunday afternoons, my parents, brother, and I would walk a few blocks across the railroad tracks to East 18th Street, where my paternal grandparents lived, in a post-Victorian working-class house with a 50 by 25-foot backyard, just enough room for a tiny garden with an abundance of vegetables, a peach tree, apricot, and 2 fig trees, which were buried, as tradition would dictate each winter, spawning only a dozen or so figs the following summer that were cherished as special gifts. The harvest was preserved yearly in ball mason jars. My grandfather would make wine, then tend to his roses garnished with fish heads under old broken gallon bottles. Exploring this tiny haven, I snuck down the coal chute into the basement, hearing the footsteps of uncles, aunts, and cousins, all living nearby in different directions, like a map depicting the spokes of a wheel. The men in the parlor smoking cigars and drinking vermouth, my mother and aunts gossiping at the dining room table. Hanging in the kitchen to help my Nonny, 4'11", always baking homemade bread, a roast and macaroni with savory gravy. She called me Chickie, smiling in her kitchen castle. I was her sous chef, admiring her artistry, who didn't read or write, signed her income tax with an X, created shirts, dresses, and pants on an old sewing machine powered by her tiny feet. We always ended up in the big dining room, eating all afternoon, laughing, making fun of each other in a weird, gentle way. Thank you.
Wonderful. Exact memories. Joe Sutera, she here? Yes. Okay, Joe Sutera, Lawrence, New Jersey, Wednesday morning at the Red, White, and Blue.
Wednesday morning at the Red, White, and Blue. Long ago, in an affluent Los Angeles suburb, 9 Catholic kids were born to a couple rhythmically out of step. My father finally practiced birth control by desertion. Mother tended her unmanageable flock with spiritual fairy tales. A quarter under the feet of the statue of the Infant of Prague will protect us from starving. On a treadled old Singer, the very machine that repaired our patched hand-me-downs, tattered jeans and t-shirts, my mother sewed vestments for this little king, a rich red velvet cape with gold trim to complement his golden slippers while we walked in soleless shoes
stuffed with newspaper that applauded our every step. 60 years later, on another coast, a Wednesday morning at the Red, White, and Blue thrift shop, on sale, cheap, 50% off all colors but the red tickets, obscured among the Santas and other discarded myths, sat an infant of Prague, battle-scarred and damaged, wrapped in faded, tattered lace, his red velvet cape askew, his nose and crown chipped, white plaster of Paris bleeding through. At 11:45 a.m., I snapped a photo with my iPhone, shared it with several of my siblings. Remind anyone of anything, I asked? I'm not sure. Is it a likeness of Mom in her early days, responds Rich. He finished with an emoji of hands folded in prayer. An emoticon laughing with tears from Gina at 12:51. Can I keep the cape, text Patrick?
Next, Jennifer Thibodeau, Pine Brook, New York, young mommy, old mommy.
Hello, everyone. This is called Young Mommy, Old Mommy. I told my coworker I still sometimes shower with my 12-year-old daughter. She looked at me like I was a pedophile. Americans are funny. I am one, I ought to know. But in my nudity, I'm European, comfortable in my nakedness. What could be wrong with scrubbing my daughter's back, memorizing her beauty marks and her voice as she says, "Turn, I'll do you." She smiles at me because her boobs are now higher than mine. She presses her soapy, warm body into me, giggling, "I am so much taller than you," happy in her young, strong body. Then she cups my 50-year-old boobs, lifts them and says, "Young mommy," drops them, "Old mommy." We laugh and scrub. I remind her that I breastfed her and her sister with these old tits. I want her to know and love her own body through mine, beyond mine. Thank you.
Wonderful, Jennifer. And next is Zant Winter, Montclair, New Jersey, the big time.
This is the big time. The first commercial I ever auditioned for, I got the part. Well, I actually didn't audition. Well, I did, but didn't know I was auditioning, so I guess I really wasn't auditioning after all. But anyway, I got the part. It was like this. The brother of a girl in my acting class at school was visiting and sitting in, we were told. And when class ended, this girl, who'd never so much as ever even thrown a hi my way, told me that her brother wanted to meet me. He'd sat in so as to choose an actor or actress, she felt the need to clarify, for a project in which he was involved. I picked up immediately on what was not said. He simply wasn't casting his sister. Clearly, it was a sore spot, as she never threw a hi my way again, or anything else for that matter, for which I suppose I should be grateful. Oh, occasionally, I catch her looking at me out of the corner of my eye as if she was plotting my demise, but who cared? I was going to be in a TV commercial. And a week later, I was at a local TV station filming an ad for a popcorn store at the mall. And for 5 hours, popcorn of every color represented in the day-glow rainbow showered down upon me. and an actress still not his sister, and the popcorn then being scooped back up and put back in a tarp high up over our heads among the studio lights. From there, it would rain down upon us again and again and again. And as I left the studio that afternoon, I wasn't only heading home, I was on my way. Local TV commercials behind me, or rather a local TV commercial, singular, behind me, and a few years later, I was living in New York and auditioning for the very first time, I might add, for what I was calling a real TV commercial. This was the big time, I was saying, but only to myself, of course, because, I had to preserve one's dignity and pride, play it as if nonchalant, no biggie, nothing new here, just another day in the life of a struggling actor. Pshaw, this was the big time. I was on my way. My audition was simple. I was to play a young air traffic controller on his first day on the job. The sides instructed me to look in the direction of a runway and see in my mind's eye a 747 headed right for the traffic control tower. I allowed my eyes to widen. My mouth widened. I felt my lungs widen as I deeply inhaled, and a scream could be seen about to emanate from my lips. Later that afternoon, the agent with whom I was freelancing called me and gave me the good news. The part was mine. And it was that little piece of improvisation that got me the part. This was the biggest yet. I was informed the director would be flying in from Copenhagen to meet me in 3 days, and in 3 days, I was ready for him, new wardrobe and all. I've never forgotten that day. It played over and over in my mind for some time, just as the commercial played over and over and over on TV screens everywhere for some time. Residuals ka-ching. But only in my mind, because it never came to be, just as the director never came to meet me. I got a call early that afternoon that my dinner appointment with him for that night had been canceled. The company had decided to go in a different direction, I was told, and I was never called or invited to go in that different direction with them, leaving me on the tarmac, left behind and disappointed, big time. Thank you.
And finally, Sharida Yoder, North Hampton, New Jersey, and her poem is called Hoarders.
I'm dedicating this poem to Don Comet, Paterson artist and poet, and he did a picture of you, Maria.
Did he?
Yes, he did. And he was.
I don't want to act with I was always pulling him up to say, "No more, Don," and sit down.
He was not a hoarder, but he lived a life of deep richness. I hoard the days, each sunrise, splintering the sky with spears of gold, birds singing, lured by my feeder. I count and bank their songs. I hoard the heartbeats of my cats, their beloved 2 brief years. It is not easy to collect the moments of lying in the warmth by one another, snug beneath our flowered quilt, the hours of contented work and reading the poetry of others. Were we not hoarders, how swift the days. If we could pile them up, save, and lock them in, the rain would fall gentle as silk in drops of silver from the roof, the rhythm of a syncopated peal. We would gather up each day, its weather a peculiar treasure, we would stack the breaths of those we love in safes of steel. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, and let's give everyone another round of applause for the wonderful layered readings, moving, funny, lots of things. Wonderful, wonderful.